Back in 2017, this phone came out and it was probably one of the best phones out, but with some major trade-offs. Now in 2026, those trade-offs don't matter, but we really start to question how usable this phone actually is. Does the Motorola Moto Z2 Force still hold up? And the reality is clearly not. The biggest problem that this phone has is not really the specs. Sure, we have the Snapdragon 835 processor with a small 64GB of UFS 2.1 storage and 4GB of RAM with 128GB/6GB RAM option out there, but generally you'll find the 64 4GB combo like I have here. It takes a memory card to help with that storage, but there's nothing you can do to make this phone faster. That said, it wasn't unusable, actually feeling pretty snappy and snappier than the Moto Z4, but it might be due to being stuck on Android 8 or Android 9 if you have the Verizon variant. This means some apps will work, like PUBG, but banking apps are not compatible with this very old software. Apps like Callsheet still works, which has to be some type of metaphor. While I have apps like YouTube Studio downloaded, I literally can't use it. And given the age, it makes sense only getting almost 2 years of updates, which honestly is more than expected during the time, which sounds insane to say now because we have the Samsung A15 that will get Android 18 somehow. Side note, the Samsung A17 5G and A14 5G have the same exact processor, with the A17 getting Android 21 or support until 2031, which I have no idea how Samsung will actually do that. Anyways, being stuck on Android 8 does some weird things, like no night mode on an OLED phone. This phone is actually kind of a miracle, and the Moto Z is even crazier, being 5.2 millimeters thin. Instead, the Z2 Force is 6.1 millimeters thin and 6.13 inches tall and 143 grams. Yeah, super thin and super light. I miss phones like this, to be honest. Although, why would I lie about that? It's a simple phone, really. It's an aluminum phone with a SIM tray SD card slot combo, like I said, on the top, as well as a microphone. The right side has the textured power button and not textured volume buttons, while the left is bare, and so is the bottom, almost, just with a simple USB-C port. This reminds me that Motorola had the USB-C port on the 5.2mm 2016 Moto Z, but Apple needed to make a special 3D printed one specifically for the 2025 iPhone Air's 5.6mm frame. Explain that one to me. Anyways, the USB-C 3.1 port allows for 5 gigabit per second transfer speed, interesting, and allows for turbocharging, which is super dated because it's only 15 watts of wired charging, something that even modern budget phones match or surpass. Again, 2017 makes sense. The back is where the magic happens, with the camera circle island housing the dual LED flash that looks very warm. There's also a laser autofocusing unit hidden in here between the two 12 megapixel cameras, and yes, it looks like a face of a robot. I don't know, but the rest of the back has an interesting plastic ring that has a hidden microphone with the metal on the side and the back, a Motorola logo that should have been a fingerprint scanner, and then these pins. Being a Z phone, this allows for the Moto mods, the real reason that someone would actually buy this phone. There are so many mods out there. You should collect them all. I have some that are great, like the speaker and Hasselblad camera, some that are cool, like the projector and a charging back that Apple technically should have gotten in trouble for copying somehow. There's got to be some patent they violated. And then we have some okay ones like the back plates and this car mount, which is kind of useless nowadays for daily usage. And that's the problem with now. This phone has 4G LTE, so it works on the network, but like I said, Android 8 is a problem. Also, the phone is slow to open and run some heavier apps. But while we're at the front, we have another flash unit, which I never actually use. I remember this was a big deal, even being a dual LED, but no one uses flash for their selfies anymore. There is a front camera as well as a microphone on the bottom and a fingerprint scanner, iPhone style, but not because you can't push it in. So iPhone 7 style. Then we have the interesting things, the single loudspeaker on the top, which sounds okay, but a single speaker even at launch was not a great idea. To be fair, few phones had dual speakers, and this kind of relies on the Moto mods, but having one speaker in total is kind of odd. The 5.5-inch OLED panel under it isn't odd though, but it is a 16:9 screen at 1440p and 60Hz for the refresh rate. It is plastic, but so is the rest of the screen. There are technically multiple layers, but this soft OLED does not have glass anywhere besides the camera area, so you can't actually break it. Now, it's an OLED, so it can develop spots, but even that is not easy to do. But yes, I do have a tempered glass screen protector on here that is cracked, and yes, it scratches like a folding phone, but also this is the third and last Motorola phone with a shatterproof screen. Yep, you missed out. Anyways, still looks good, but the brightness is an issue. Barely going over 350 nits in manual mode, maybe 500 plus in auto mode. This was a great phone in the old days, but now it's hard to recommend this phone for much outside of the Moto mods and game emulation. I will say though, I used to use this all the time for PUBG because the sizing just felt right, and it still does. You just need to put on some headphones. Now, why someone would buy this phone is because of the mods, or simply like the design, because while I feel like this is more snappier than the Moto Z4, somehow, no one should buy this phone. Especially when talking about the cameras. I'll show you the 5 megapixel camera that looks like an old CCD point and shoot camera. Video is 1080p 30 frames per second, and this is from the 2 to 8 megapixel front camera era, but it is strange that Motorola was adding dual flashes for the front camera. It's like they wanted it to be great and then just decided to not make it great. Quality can be kind of good in controlled lighting, but again, 5 megapixels. Then the rear cameras are the same 12 megapixel sensors with no optical image stabilization, and it definitely shows. One is a black and white sensor while the other is color, and no, just like the Essential phone, I have no idea why they did this. Quality is not as bad as I remember, but the front camera is definitely concerning. 4K video is weak and not great at 30 frames per second max. The Hasselblad mod kind of helps with shots, but also it's debatable as the camera sensor on the Hasselblad mod is a 1/2.3 inch 12 megapixel sensor, while the 1/2.8 inch 12 megapixel sensors are on the phone, with the Hasselblad having the option of 10 times optical zoom, but only 1080p video. What's also concerning is the battery. At 2,730 milliamps, it's definitely not big. That said, being bigger than the iPhone 8 Plus, but smaller than the Samsung S8 Plus, or S8 for that matter. This thin phone's battery life is not great, but is expected, and replacing the battery is easy because the hard-to-break screen. That said, it's actually not that easy. But overall, these aren't the reasons to buy this phone. What I can think of is the form factor and gaming, and that's about it. But hey, at least the vibration motor is decent on this phone and doesn't feel like an old school flip phone. Now, the fact that you got this far into the review is kind of impressive. This is a phone that is truly end of life, with the last security patch literally being 7 years ago, so it makes sense that some apps simply don't work. I wouldn't recommend buying this phone, and honestly it kind of makes me sad remembering how this was a perfectly acceptable phone and especially how good the phone was. Can you use it and buy it today? Yes. Should you? Not at all. And that's my review of the Motorola Moto Z2 Force, the best Moto mod phone out there. But what do you think? Do you have a similar phone and use it for something else? Let me know, and as always, thanks for joining the 1%, and thanks for watching.